All right, we're on. So well, first of all, good evening, everyone. This is the annual Prescott School District Board meeting. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to call this meeting to order. First item here on the call of order, I would like to introduce Sven Strutz. He's with our district attorney for Prescott. He's with Wald Riley, and he's here to kind of help us navigate through any procedural questions that we might have on the meeting tonight. So thank you for coming, Sven. I'm sorry, I appreciate it. And secondly, I wanted to kind of talk through a little bit of the guidelines for tonight's meeting, and just to kind of set the stage. We got some new people here tonight. This is the annual meeting, and so from a guidelines perspective, there's a few things that are different from regular board meetings. Just a reminder, this is an annual meeting. It's a meeting for the people, and the people vote tonight, not the school board. I want to make that really clear. Voting is done by the electors in the audience here, not by the school board. How you address the assembly, the group, the electors, is also different. People don't come up to the podium. I think we have microphones. Hopefully we can pass around, right? The guidelines are also listed in the handouts, but we have a few people here tonight, so I'd like to kind of walk through that really quick before we start. And it's in the handout as well, if you got it up there, Rick. Yep, okay. So for addressing the assembly and the chair, please stand and wait for the chair to call on you, and then identify yourself in the municipality that you reside in. If you're making a motion, just make sure the clerk has a correct motion, and the clerk is
Katie, and she's in the back.
Katie Hillenbrand in the back. Okay, so we want to make sure the motion gets recorded and it's correct. Once a motion has been made and seconded, we request that whoever speaks in favor of the motion be followed by someone who is opposed, and vice versa, until everybody has had a chance to speak. After speaking, just please refrain from commenting on the same issues until everybody's done, and then you'll have an opportunity up to 5 minutes, basically, to speak on a particular topic or issue. Votes are going to be decided by a voice vote. If it's requested by anybody in the audience, any elector can request this, the votes will be decided by a show of hands. So you just request that we like to have a vote by a show of hands. There's identified tellers. I believe Sarah is one of them. Is Sarah, you the only one? And Andrea. So Sarah and Andrea will help count the votes as we raise hands if we need to identify by hands. And also matters pertaining to specific individuals or sensitive subjects may be tabled for discussion outside of the assembly. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, one point of clarification: the board members can vote as members of this community.
That is
so
correct.
We do hold one vote.
Yes, so the board members do have a vote as well. That's correct. All right. So with that said, we'll go to item 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Steve, would you care to lead us here?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so the next item is to elect a chairperson for the annual meeting, and I'm just going to go through the guidelines that we've followed in the past. Any voting member of the audience can make a nomination. Nominations do not require a second. And I will ask 3 times if there's additional nominations, and then we'll close the nominations. You will then vote on the person nominated. If there's only one person, it's really easy. But if there's 2, the chair will be determined by the majority of those voting will determine the elected chair. However, if there's no majority, sorry, I got to back up a second here. If there's 3 or more nominees, again, the majority of those voting would determine who is the elected chair. If there's no majority, the least vote getter will drop out and we will re-vote. If there's a tie, which I hope it doesn't come to this, if there's a tie for the least vote getter, we'll flip a coin to see who is determined to be dropped out. We had to have something as a tiebreaker. Are there any questions on the process? Anybody can speak freely here at this point. Just stand up and speak.
I think I don't know
Sven, why don't you come up to the mic here?
I don't know if this is going to be covered in your remarks, but did you want to address, did you want me to address who is eligible to vote? And the procedure?
Go ahead, Sven, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yep.
Want to get on the mic? Yep, sure. Under Wisconsin, am I showing up in the
Yep,
mic?
you're good.
Okay. Under Wisconsin statutes, only electors are eligible to vote. That means a resident over the age of 18. If there is a challenge to any voter, the remedy for that is we administer an oath to that voter, and if that voter takes the oath, that resolves the challenge.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or clarifications on anything? Harold?
We can nominate somebody that's up there.
That is correct, yes. And the question was, can we nominate anybody that's sitting up here on the board? And that is correct, yes. Yep.
I nominate Mike Matzik.
Okay, yeah, I guess we'll take nominations at this point, so thank you. There's one nomination on the table.
I didn't hear who it was.
The nomination was Mike Matzik.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? And lastly, are there any other nominations? All right. So we'll make a vote here. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. We'll move on. I'll humbly take the chair here tonight. Thank you. The fourth item on the agenda is to actually adopt the agenda. So at this point, we would accept.
I'll move to adopt the agenda as presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. We are now on to reviewing the minutes for the 2020 annual meeting. And Dr. Spicuzza, do you have that?
Yeah, the minutes are in the packets. They're up there. Just a call of order. I don't know if they're necessarily approved by the community here or just referenced.
I don't think they need to be.
So this is just to review the minutes. I guess I will open it up. If there's any questions on the minutes from the previous annual meeting, please stand. All right. Thank you. Let's move on to reports. The first report we have is the school board submission. Dr. Spicuzza.
Thank you. All right. Tonight I will be very brief, but I wanted to identify for everybody in the community that a year ago the school board had adopted a new mission, vision, and value statement. This is something that we were committed to and worked across different stakeholders and within our school system and brought forward to the board. Our mission is to inspire lifelong learners for the future success by engaging our students, our staff, families, and our community. This is one example of an opportunity to engage and have public dialogue about the future and the vision that we want to create as a community that with respect, relationships, responsibility, rigor, and relevance. And those are the 5 R's that you often see promoted on our emails and listed throughout this building. In addition, our vision is to deliver meaningful, creative opportunities that establish continuous learning, positive outcomes, and an inclusive community. The second step was that the school board then identified the strategic direction, of which the 4th bullet was specifically about financial fiscal management and taking care of its facilities. So this year we have a facility advisory committee that's been approved by the school board. They are meeting on a monthly basis. They've had 2 meetings and we have representatives here tonight. We've asked 3 individuals, Mike Hoyka from Facility and Grounds, Dan Roth, who is a at-large community member, and then Ryan with Market and Johnson to present an update with regards to the Facility Advisory Committee. So at this time, Mike Hoyka, if you would approach, and we'll start the presentation.
Hello. What I'm going to do is just give you an example of some of the slides and some of the information we shared with the Facilities Committee meeting to, as we said, going over a discussion of the building maintenance items that we need to take care of in the near future. So, as you can see here, we're looking at some water damaged tiles due to a roof that's aging and nearing replacement. We have some windows that are due for replacement. This happens to be at the Malone Elementary. They're the 88 windows, and they're past their life expectancy and due to be replaced. Okay. Here we're looking at the roofs. As you can see, the R2 and the R3 roof are the 88 part of the building. Those roofs were put on in 09. It's a TPO. It's in good condition yet. The roofs we're concerned about looking at here is R1 and R4, which are the 1963 part of the building and the 2001 building. It's a built-up roof. It has about a 25-year life expectancy, so it's getting near its end of its life that we're looking at doing a replacement of that. Here we're showing some building envelope areas that we need to address. Need some brick replacement, some tuck pointing, some sealing of the expansion joints to keep moisture out of the building and keep our exterior solid. Another thing we wanted to address, in 2013, we did a major HVAC project over there in the 1963 part of the wing. And then again in 2018, we did the 1988 wing, and but we did not do our gym. So our gym is non-air conditioned space, which is adding a heating load onto the rest of the building. So one of the things we'd like to do there is upgrade the air handlers, the 1988 gym and air handlers, put some cooling in there, and also the 2001 wing, the unit ventilators that are in the classrooms are getting close to past their life expectancy. So that'd be a good time to put in rooftop air handlers, some VAV boxes, similar to we did in the 1988 wing. So then also have upgrade building automation on that. Here we're looking at some of these Bulldog panels are in our kitchen, which are original from 1963. That company is no longer in business. Parts are obsolete, discontinued, can't get. Same with the big switch over there. So we'd like to upgrade the electrical where it's needed in the building. In the kitchen, they have an old PA system. Not sure the age of that, somewhere between 88 and 1963. So very awkward to use and make announcements, whether it be daily announcement, emergency announcements. Fire alarm system, we'd like to upgrade that to a single system. Right now, it's been kind of, you can see the different components. It's been added on as the building's been added on. So we'd like to upgrade that to one fire alarm system. Here we're also looking at things that are not ADA compliant in the building, drinking fountains. We have some urinals that are not flush handles or electric eyes. ADA compliant bathroom, as you can see the door swings in. And this is a K-3 building, so we should have one water fountain that's lower to the ground for the younger students. In Malone Intermediate School, I got a few photos here I just want to touch too. We're looking at building envelope items that we want to take care of, some rusty lintels, some windows, some doors, the upgrade, some upgrade on some door hardware. And here, this is a space we'd like to abate the science lab, get rid of the cabinetry and stuff, and make this a large classroom so we can utilize this space. As you can see, pretty much it's just used for storage, where it could be an educational classroom. A couple other things we'd like to take care of is and also in the elementary, their kitchen hood too is undersized for the amount of equipment that is in the kitchen now. And they both do not have fire suppression systems in them, so it'd be nice to upgrade those to that. Our dryers need to put a combustible air duct in that, maybe even update the dryer. As you can see, it's fairly old. Upgrade some air intakes to better operate more efficiently. Replacing some of the old, I'm sure these exhaust fans are probably put in, these are original ones from 1969. You can see a newer one in the background we have replaced, but we'd like to upgrade those. Boiler room, we have some upgrades we'd like to do in there. Replace a chimney. Fire alarm system here, upgrade it to a more modern one type of unit instead of having a multiple patch system. Clock system's been outdated. Another large item we'd like to take care of, you can see our backup generator here. It's past its life. I can't get parts for it. It is still running, but when we replace it, we'll have to relocate that to the outside. That might be a time we look at this old switch panel and upgrade that. I guess that's about it I kind of had. So that's kind of some of the things we've been looking at on the facilities committee, is just looking at all the generational repair stuff we have to do. And all these items that's on this long list that we have that was developed with myself and SDS, they're all items that we're looking at replacing. They're 20-year items, 25-year items. So they're not just remodels. These are long-term fixes to keep our buildings operational and safe. So.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Next up is Dan Roth.
He's with the Facilities Committee.
I'm not as good of a wordsmith as Mike Koika is, so please help me out here when I misspeak. I don't have a loud voice. I'm not boisterous. I may have an opinion, but other than that, peanut gallery. So I have been tasked with being the speaker, the person to talk to you guys with my very great wordsmithing tonight for the FAC. We've gone over a few things here. We haven't had a lot of time to sit and really, I guess, digest everything that's out there.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Check, check. So we haven't had a lot of time to digest everything. We're working on this. We're step by step getting in there. There's 11 of us out there as the representative of the community. I'm not sure if any of you know who we are. I don't know everybody that's on the community either myself. But if anybody sees me out there, please tug on my shirt and tell me what you think. All right? I want to do the best thing for the community. It's not always going to be popular vote, right? Because we have to pay for it. But the thing is, our schools really do need some work. They need a lot of work. Our community is growing. Things are coming up. The roofs are old. Tuck pointing. Does anybody know what tuck pointing means? Okay, so not everybody does. Tuck pointing, if you tuck point, you're keeping the elements from outside coming inside, and that's a good thing. So we do need to tuck point. And roofing, right? If you don't want to leak a roof on your house. You don't want to leak a roof on your school. So, not to throw any bad words out there, but we don't want any of that moisture from outside to come inside, which we've seen before. We don't have 3 options yet, but we're working on it. What we do have is we've gone through, basically if you just looked at Mike's slides and you saw the video out there, hopefully you did see the video. If you didn't, please watch it. There are things that absolutely need to be done. But what are we able to do? We don't know this yet. We're working on what is viable for the community, what can we do, what we want to do, and understanding that we have new businesses, new homes. I think you've all seen that there's a lot of developments going on, so there are new homes coming in, and new people coming in. That means more taxpayers. That means our tax burden is going to go down. So we have looked at a few things for some of the schools. We did not do a whole lot on the middle school, current middle school, even though we know that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. But I think what our priorities right now are on the elementary and the intermediate. And Harold, we will rename the intermediate someday. It will happen, okay? Yeah. It's pretty simple to look. Just look at those charts there. There are some things that need to be done. There, in group 1, group 2 on the bottom, we don't agree on everything. So we've had 2 meetings together. There's no way we can agree on everything. But we've come to some agreements on a few things. Just know that we are doing our best to look at what is best for the community, what is best for the schools, what is best for the buildings. I am in the construction industry, and I want to do work all over the country, especially here, because this is where I live. But I also don't want to do anything that's stupid, right? So that just look at things, what you would do at your home if you had to do them at your home. If you had somebody that was in a wheelchair and you didn't have an ADA bathroom, what are you going to do? You're probably going to make an ADA bathroom, right? So these are things we have to do. You got to leak a roof, you got to do a roof. You have to do a roof. If it leaks, you have to do it. We can't go through and tell you what's everything's going to cost right now. We can't tell you our exact recommendations, but if you look at what us as the 11, we're trying to represent the community, feel is the high priority, definite priority, low priority, no priority. And we may not be right, because there's only 11 of us, and there's 4,700, I don't forget how many people are in here, but there's about 500 people in Prescott, right? So 11 people can't speak for everyone. We're doing our best. These are things that do absolutely need to be addressed. Do we need to do everything right away? Probably not. If we can get our tax burden at the right place, this would be the time to do it. All the new houses coming in, all the new businesses coming in, this would be the time to do it. Otherwise, we're looking at probably another, 15, 20 years. When was the last time we did a referendum? Spookuza? 2014. So 7 years. So we have to wait another 7 years, and these roofs are not going to last another 7 years. I'm not telling you we have to do anything. I'm just saying that's my opinion. So we did this other exercise for the facilities. Malone Elementary, intermediate. We don't call it Malone Intermediate, Harold. It's just intermediate for you. And then middle school, which others refer to as a school. But as the group, we decided this is where we're going to spend this. If we had $100 to spend on facilities, this is where we would spend it. These are the priority areas. This is really as far as we've gotten. We know there's a lot of things that need to be done. We know there's roofs everywhere that need to be replaced. There's ADA bathrooms that we need. There's ADA ramps that need to be fixed. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. If we're going to take our $100 right now out of my pocket out of our 11 pockets, that's where we want to spend it. May or may not be right, but that's where we're at now, and we're still in the infancy stage of figuring out what we want to do, what we can do, and what as a community we're going to agree to. I hope everybody understands we have to do roofs. And we have to do the building envelope so we don't let moisture get into the buildings. That has happened before. And I think everybody knows, but I'm not going to say what happened before. I'm just saying I think everybody knows what has happened before. We don't want that to happen, so we need to do it at least minimum that. So I don't want to open it to questions because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of them. But please, if anybody sees me out, grab me on the shirt tail, talk to me, and we'll figure this out.
Thank you, Dan. And then lastly, we have Randy LaFave? Yeah, from Mark and Johnson.
Not Ryan.
Giving you a hard time, it's okay. I've been called much worse, that's all right. Yeah. Yeah, so my name is Randy LaFave. I represent Market and Johnson. We were obtained a few months back as the construction manager for the district. We've been in business for close to 75 years. The role of what we're going to provide is one, the expertise of the construction market, manage the work that's going to happen, provide a resource for the district, SDS, for Mike. We're not here to dictate what gets done. We're just here to provide the necessary information to make those decisions for you, the district. The other thing that we bring to the table is we do have a proven track record with referendums throughout the I would say Western Wisconsin. Myself, I've been through Spring Valley recently, Somerset. We got Durand on there. We've got a number of them in the area. We bring just a long list of history that way. So our true role is, again, the construction manager. And what we're going to do after we get through, let me just put you to post-referendum. So let's just say the referendum does pass. Everything is moving forward with some facet of work. Our next role responsibility is taking the information, taking what that is, and then start working with a design team to create what we call the design phase. So it'll be a design development, schematic design. What it does is just continually emphasizes the details that go into what eventually becomes a construction document, which gets bid out to the marketplace and gets built out there. This process, again, is a collaborative effort. It's working with you, the district, working with the architect, working with the committees that we have, and at the end of the day, we get to that construction document. Our role then becomes the manager of the work itself. You know, doing the work, managing the work, make sure it gets done on time and under budget. Frankly, that's the biggest task we have. The slide here that's popping up, this cost-saving process, I guess that's really an important one to put out there. What that slide represents is that as we assemble the items from the referendum, the roofs, the tuck pointing, the things that have to happen, we'll put a dollar amount on every one of those items. And that will become our task list of what we can do. And as we progress through that design, some things will stay on, some things may come off because of budget issues or concerns. But this list will always have them a live item, so that if the budget becomes freed up to do something that we initially put off, we know what that value is, we know how it's going to be, and we can incorporate that into the project. Just kind of winging it here so far. So good though. So the bidding process, that's another key element here. So the bidding process, because we have 3 schools that we're going to likely do some work to in some facet or another, it's a big task. Somerset Schools, for instance, was a recent one that we did that had 3 different schools. Every one of them had different elements of it, deferred maintenance, some had additions to it. It's a big role that we have. We've got to make a bid document that's attractive to the marketplace, make it small enough that those that are in the community that do construction work have the ability to do it, make sure we manage our risk, so it's not just if it's a roof, for instance, we're doing roofs on all three of them, I don't want to necessarily give it the roof project to the same person, all three of them. That doesn't disperse my risk out there very well. So that's a big part of our project as well, is to make sure that is done in a meaningful way, that we're not just willing, throwing this out there to the market and getting a mixed bag of results. And then again, the referendum piece, we've got a proven track record. We've done great work with many different districts. We really push transparency on our side. So when we get into that process, you will see what we're doing. We'll communicate that with you, the district, with the community. We're open for any questions as well throughout the process, but really emphasize transparency. That's what makes it all kind of work out for us. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh yeah. So when everybody walked in, the videos you see on the TV there of the 3 schools, those will be posted on the district site tonight, I believe. That was one of some crafty work that made Mike famous here. One of our IT guys in the office did a drone shoot around and videotaped everything from there as well. But please take a look at that. That does a really good job of explaining exactly what is going on with the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. And lastly, we have school financing from Lisa Boyson from Baird Financial.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Boyson. I'm from Robert W. Baird. We're a financial firm headquartered in Milwaukee, and we work with about 80% of the school districts in the state of Wisconsin, helping them finance building projects. I've worked with Prescott probably going on 10 years now, helped finance this facility, so it's great to be here and see the fruit of my labor and the high school as well. And so I've been with Baird for about 33 years and pretty much doing school finance the entire time I've been there. I also was on the school board, so I kind of have your perspective a little bit in Muskego, which is a suburban Milwaukee school district. So what I want to do in the next 15 minutes is just kind of hit some of the highlights, some of the questions that you might have that I've seen being asked over the years, and just kind of hit some points about your taxes and the finances of the district. The district is very well positioned financially, and you're going to see that in the next couple of slides. So, I can do that, yeah. You really need to, and we've already talked about this, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but really when you start looking at how you finance a facility project, you need to look at what kind of facilities or what your needs are, and we just talked and went through that entire process. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but you're in those smaller maintenance needs, the boiler, the new roofs, the pipes, the HVAC, rather than what we did the last time around, which was the high school and this facility. So when you look at how you're going to finance these needs, there's really a couple of ways to do this, and this is what I always get asked. Why can't we pay for it out of our operational funds? Why can't we just pay for it on an annual basis? Why do we have to ask voters to go and vote to borrow money to pay for this project? And so this is hopefully going to help that answer that question, this in the next slide. So you really, when you're looking at the smaller projects, like if you have to just finance a boiler or put new carpeting in, certainly districts can pay for that out of their operational budget pretty easily. Or out of their fund balance, funds that they have available. There's a couple of other options that districts have. They have a capital project savings fund typically that you can pay for it out of as well. So when they're smaller projects, sure you can pay for it out of your annual operational budget. That's not a problem. But when you're looking at these bigger ticket items, and when some of that capital maintenance adds up to a larger dollar amount, districts don't have a choice. They need to borrow funds to pay for all of those projects. And they cannot pay for it out of their operational budget. So that's really what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about borrowed funds or voter-approved borrowing. A little bit about, and I'll get back to that in a second. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the finances of the district. and just say, hey, they're in a really good fiscal position right now. Their current fund balance is about $5.6 million. What does that mean? It's basically funds that they have available to basically bridge the gap when they pay their expenses every 2 weeks, but they only get their taxes once a year. They rely on that fund balance to help bridge the gap. Districts that don't have a strong fund balance have to borrow. They have to pay their expenses. It's typically the salaries and benefits, right, every 2 weeks. So the fact that you do have a 35% fund balance is music to my ears. I think that's a great, good, solid fund balance, and it leads right into a very, very solid bond rating. In fact, the district recently got upgraded by Moody's Investors Service. What does that mean to you? When you go and borrow money, Moody's is going to stamp a rating on those bonds. And when the lender lends the money to the district, the higher the rating, the lower the interest rate. So lower interest costs for you taxpayers. So I am constantly trying to get that higher bond rating. And we worked really hard to get the AA3, which is a great bond rating for a district this size. So again, having that strong bond rating is going to provide lower interest rates when you go to borrow. And this all leads into the fiscal responsibility of that strong fund balance. So I just showed you a little bit of history of revenues versus expenditures on an annual basis. And again, that blue bar is your fund balance. And again, 35% is a strong number. So good job. Good job, board. Okay, a little bit about taxes. So because that's what you're concerned about, right? You're gonna be borrowing money, paying it back, and it's gonna go on your tax bill. So to understand what the taxes is made up of sometimes helps you understand the process and what we're talking about when we talk about mill rate. So I always like to start with the tax levy, looking at how much is the district asking the community for in dollars. So here we've got on the left-hand side the revenue limit levy. That is dictated by the state. That's why there's a red bar around that, because the board can't increase that revenue limit levy. It's dollars they use for operations dictated by the formula from the state. Then there's the community service tax levy, and there's voter-approved debt tax levy. So just remember that voter-approved debt is separate from the operations of the district and the revenue that they bring in a tax on the revenue limit side. You can increase that $6.7 million, but the district would have to go to referendum, which I think they recently did, to increase your revenue limit, right? I have a slide on that in a minute. But anyway, so what we're talking about is the right-hand side tax levy, that voter-approved debt, which is principal and interest on loans that you have outstanding for this facility right now, basically. So your total tax levy last year was $9.5 million. What does that mean to you? We take that levy and we divide it by all of the property value of the school district, which is $893. And this goes back to Dan's comment about increasing property value. You've got more businesses and more development, more growth. The higher the property value, the lower the mill rate for you. So we're gonna take the total levy I just showed you, divided by the property value, and come up with a mill rate of $10.70. What that means to you is, on a $100,000 home, because it's stated on a per $1,000 basis, you just move the decimal over 2. So when you see a mill rate of $10.72, move the decimal over 2, and that's the school tax on your tax bill, $1,072. That's there's more that goes into that. There's more detail that I'm not going to get into, but what I want you to take away from this is how to convert mill rate to your tax bill. It's as easy as moving the decimal over 2, and that's your taxes on a $100,000 home. Double it if you have a $200,000 home. Just school tax. Obviously, there's village town. Is that what you're going to ask? Oh, do you have a question? Oh, yeah, because this is a $100,000 home, right? You double it if you have a $200,000 home. Yep. So Prescott's mill rate is $10.72, which is on the right there. This is last year. The message I want to send here is that it's been coming down. So 6 years ago in 2014-15, the school tax on a $100,000 home would be $1,243. So the trend is going down, and mainly because you've got that kind of tax-based growth and all that property value. I'm going to come back to this in just a minute too. There's a couple questions on TIF districts. Sometimes this comes up. I'm a big fan of TIF districts. I think they're great for community development, but they really don't affect a school district until they close. So you do have a TIF district that's closing this year, may have already closed, and the added value on your tax base is $13 million, so that helps you because this TIF district is now absorbing some of your taxes. It's not a big number though. The 13 million is only like 1 or 2% of your tax base. So it's not a big deal. But know that you have these TIF districts. There's one that is done in 2026, that's the big one. So you may see a relief in your taxes in that year.
What does TIF stand for?
Sorry. TIF is a tax incremental financing district, and I always use the example in Muskego. We had a Walmart go in to our city, and it was a blighted property. It was not even being used, this land. The only reason Walmart went in is because we created a TIF district there. The city borrowed money to put in infrastructure for them, street lights, curbs, all the stuff that Walmart wanted to move in. And so the city borrowed money to do that, put all the infrastructure. Well, when Walmart pays their taxes, it goes to pay the city's debt off. Now the city's debt is coming offline, and Walmart's value is being added to the school. So during the time that the Walmart is there paying taxes and the city still has debt, debt from the infrastructure, this is just a real simple example, but it doesn't benefit the district. It benefits when the TIF closes and when all the city's debt is paid off and now Walmart's taxes is going back to the school. Okay, so that's basic, just because sometimes those questions come up and you guys should be proud that you have 3 TIF districts. I think it's great. I get questions a lot about how much can a district borrow? Like how much debt can a school district in Wisconsin have outstanding? So there's state law that says 10% of your tax base. So 10% of that equalized value or the total value of all the property in the school district is 96 million. You guys won't get anywhere close to that. Most districts don't. But just so you know, there is a debt capacity or debt limit. So now I'm getting a little technical on you, but I think this is important because we're going to be able to set up the district, I think, with a no impact or no increase in your mill rate with a potential new referendum borrowing for maintenance. We are going to, I'm going to say it again because it's really important, we are going to set up the district so that there's going to be no increase in your mill rate or that tax rate if we borrow 8 to 12 million, and I don't have an exact dollar amount, but whatever that dollar amount is for maintenance, we think we can fit that in that light blue bar without having an increase, which is great for you, right? It's not an increase over the prior year, right? We talked about this morning a little bit. So again, what you're looking at here is the same mill rate chart I just showed you, but I broke it out into debt and operating. So the top is purple, that's your debt. So that's the levy for debt, and the rest of it is the operating and community service. And again, it's the same mill rate chart you just saw where you see that decreasing, but what I did is I took it out 3 years. And I said, well, what would the future look like? A lot of assumptions here because we're assuming the operating stays flat, that dark blue stays flat. But it looks like we would be able to fit in a referendum without an increase in your tax mill rate. So I think that's really good news. And one of the reasons why we're able to do that is because this year in 21-22, there's a little gray bar there. I don't know if you can see it, but in 21-22, this year we might be able to prepay some debt to increase the mill rate so it's flat or a little bit of a drop and prepay some debt. So it's really setting you up well. It's a great plan. I do this in a lot of districts. So hopefully that makes sense. Yep, we did that last year as well. And it's a thinner gray line. So what the district does is instead of allowing that mill rate drop significantly, a lot of districts do this where they'll levy a little bit more for their debt payment, and that's what they did last year. They levied more for your debt payment, and that's what we're going to do again this year. $990,000. Oh, was that the refinancing? Yeah. So we also I was going to explain that. Oops. Okay. So we also, this is kind of related but not related, is we refinanced debt for you, and I'll show a slide on that in just a minute, and saved almost $1 million in interest costs because interest rates have just plummeted, as you guys all know. I put another slide in here. All I did was just extend it out into the future. So again, that light blue, because it would be a 20-year borrowing, which is another big question to get. How long are you going to amortize this debt? Statutorily, the state only lets you go out 20 years. So even with the 20-year borrowing, we're projecting that that mill rate would stay at the 10.23 or lower in the future. A lot of assumptions here too, so I'm going to go to the next slide. This was the slide I was going to say we refinanced, because we took advantage of the lower interest rates. This goes back to, wow, almost just a little bit after when I started at Baird. So interest rates were at 7 and 8% for schools, and now they're down to 2%. So when you talk about borrowing and school districts, funding their facility projects through loans, right now they're locking in 2%, 2.5% interest rates for a 20-year loan, which is, when you talk about millions of dollars, is a lot of interest cost savings. So we looked at your debt from the last referendum, and we refinanced and locked in that much, much lower rate. I think it was a 171. Was it we don't remember, but it was low, and we saved almost $1 million in interest costs taking advantage of these low interest rates. This is what we talked about a little bit before, but this is good to know. I don't know if this presentation will be on the website, but this is just good to have, good to know. When did we go to referendum last? That question always comes up. So in 2016, you went for our recurring referendum. That was adding to the revenue limit. I talked about that on one of the earlier slides. That revenue limit tax levy that is limited, has a red box around it. The district asked to exceed that revenue limit in 2016, and it passed. So it's one of the reasons why the district is in such great, stable financial condition. Then in 2016, in February, you had one fail. And then in 2015, I misspoke earlier, I think I said 2014, because in 2015, you went for the auditorium. And then in 2014, if you remember, there were 2 questions on the ballot. One was a high school, one was the auditorium, and the auditorium had failed. So just your history, and this is not an uncommon chart. Most districts have gone several times over the past 5 or 10 years to referendum for either debt for facilities or to increase their revenue limit. I'm not going to go through all these, but this is, again, sometimes people say, well, what did neighbors do? Our neighbor, or they'll get the facts wrong. These are the facts about what your neighboring school districts have done, how much they have asked for, whether it passed or failed. So one of the big ones I worked on in 2018 was Ellsworth. Or no, actually it was 2016, their new elementary school. That's on the very bottom. Somerset's high school is on here as well, or capital maintenance is on here. Yeah, so a good pass-fail rate for your area referendums. I think this is the last slide, so probably not really relevant to you as much as it is to the board. But the spring primary election day is that first date on the upper left, February 15th. The board has to decide what it is they want to put on the ballot for what dollar amount and what purpose by December 7th. So that's an important date for the board. And then if you decide in April, the deadline for the board to adopt and file the resolutions is the end of January. So those are your kind of options right now that you're looking at. I know you're looking at February, right? So just a little bit on that. And, oh yeah, that's right, I had some stats on pass, fail for referendum. So basically, in the past 10 years, 53% of school debt issues passed. And I think a good statistic is that in 2021, there were 36 debt questions on the ballot for state of Wisconsin. So out of 424 school districts, 36 of them were asking for upgrades to facilities, new facilities, maintenance, something like that. And we really do have the past percentage here is really November has always been the strongest month for the state of Wisconsin to pass referendum. But it's just a statistic. I always say, go when you're ready, don't follow the statistics, because if you're ready, you can get the referendum passed if you have informed voters, in my opinion. So that covers that. Are we opening up for questions later or now, or?
Is it okay if we open it up?
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Lisa?
Yep.
One question I would have is, it looked like, according to the slide, that we had a 2% growth assumption on the valuation of the school district. And if we were to, let's say hypothetically, we seen it swing because of a 35% correction in real estate markets, which could happen, how would that play into that mill rate? Would it push us back to that 12.38 per 100,000 worst case? I'm just asking what you think.
Well, state average, I feel like we're very conservative this year, right? Because state average growth in valuation is 7%, and we're using 2. And I think, do you know what they were? I think we were projecting 6% this fall. But you are absolutely right. If that 2% would go to 0 or negative, you're going to see an increase in your mill rate. I cannot see that happening in Prescott, especially in light of what you just said about the development. But you're right. I don't know the math. I can't say if it would go to $12 or $13, or it shouldn't go that high. But I could probably I could run a couple of scenarios and figure that out. But I can't.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you.
But you're right. That's a good point. Somebody else? Yep.
Yeah, my question, sorry, the comment on informed voters, I'm trying to get information. As I look at the taxes here in Wisconsin, we are taxed at the 9th highest in the nation for property taxes. 43% of that goes to the schools. So I guess I'm trying to figure out for the referendum, for the committee, where is that 43% of my 10 per thousand going? And why is that not, you kind of discussed that, but I didn't quite understand, why is that not taken care of, the maintenance? As Dan mentioned, that when you have buildings, you have to prepare for maintenance. When I have on my home, I know that the roof will last X amount of years. I know that the siding, the paint, whatever. So I guess what I don't understand, where being the 9th highest in the nation in taxes, how we're not able to handle the expenses.
So 43% of your tax bill goes to schools. We're the 9th highest in the nation in taxes. I didn't know that statistic. That's a good one.
Just Google. So.
Well, what I'll say to that is that Wisconsin, every state in the country has a different formula for schools, and every one is so vastly different. Wisconsin has the revenue limit formula, so we're limited as to the amount of revenue we can collect in a school district. And it's based on all kinds of factors, mainly your enrollment. So if you have declining enrollment, you might have declining revenue. So we're limited. We can't levy. So when I was in Muskego, we had a $350,000 a year maintenance budget. It just wasn't enough to upkeep the roofs with that kind of budget. And you know what? As soon as we started having a little declining enrollment and our revenue was going down, because if you lose a couple of kids, you really can't cut a teacher, right? You still have to have, whatever. So when our revenue was going down, where was the first place as a school board member that we went to cut? We went and cut our maintenance budget because we didn't feel like that affected kids as much as programming or larger class sizes or all of the other factors that go into education. We cut the maintenance budget, and you see it all over the state of Wisconsin right now. Districts don't even have maintenance budgets. Many of them don't have any kind of annual funds appropriated for carpeting, boilers, roofs, anything, because they are limited on this revenue limit, and they have to pay their teachers, and they have to have good programming, and they have to have all of the operational, I don't know, snow shoveling and buses and transportation. So I don't know if that helps you. I think the main reason is the revenue limit. It's that you can't just levy a tax to pay for what you need. It used to be that way back in the 80s. You could just do zero-based budgeting and levy for whatever your expenses were. Can't do that anymore. You've got to fit your expenses into what the state says you can raise in revenue. Probably a long answer to that question, but I'm passionate about that.
Harold Clement Prescott, aren't you supposed to stand up and identify yourself? And are you not supposed to get a microphone so that the people can hear you?
Do you want a microphone here?
No, but it would have hurt him to have one because I could not understand him.
Sorry about that, Harold. I thought I was talking loud enough. My apology.
Okay.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Would you like him to repeat the question?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sorry about
Anything else? Anything else that I may have skipped over that you guys have questions on?
Where are, Ken Anderson, Clifton Township, you said that we are saving money from refinancing. Where is that money going and how is that being used currently?
Oh, so then I'll keep it on this slide. So voter approved
Did you
debt.
want to repeat that question? I'm sorry, I see some hands up in the back. Thank you. Thanks, Ken.
Ken Anderson, Clifton Township. I asked where the money that we're getting in savings of from being refinanced, where that money is being used currently.
That's a really good question because a lot of times I'll have board members ask me, well, can we, get Project Lead the Way now because we just saved $1 million in refinancing, and the answer is no, because look at that slide. Voter approved debt is a completely separate tax levy. You can't levy for a debt payment. You can't tax for a debt principal and interest payment and use that to get Project Lead the Way or new programming or a new teacher. You've got to levy for debt separately. So what we did is we decreased that levy for debt. Instead of being at 3%, your principal and interest was at 1%. I'm just throwing out numbers, but we reduced the voter-approved debt levy.
So it came off of our debt services then?
Yes.
Okay.
On an annual basis, your debt payments are lower because we have the lower interest rate, but you just can't use that somewhere else.
Does anybody else have any questions for Lisa while we have her?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. All right, that concludes reports. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, presentation of the budget and hearing.
The two-step process.
Yep.
All right. Tonight, what we're going to do is move into the business section. I'm going to begin with just a quick discussion with regards to where and when money comes into the district as a point of the fund balance. So the fund balance is reported as of June 30th. It's not money that's in the bank, but it's basically our cash flow. And then Debbie Burnett from Baird Financial will do the hearing and the first resolution with the tax levy for the 21-22 school year. This is a slide that we have been using across time, and there's some changes in the way and when funding occurs. So this is the cash flow train. The schedule is new. As you see on the left-hand side where it says July and August, and there's a strike-through. Historically, for July and August of 2021 is when we received the last amount of dollars for our fiscal year for last school year. The state and legislature has done away with that, and on the far right, you'll see end of year is new, is that we will be receiving 35% of our revenue in June. And so that is something that has helped. There was a lot of push to try to get to quarterly payments. So like a lease that schools would receive 25% 4 times a year. We didn't quite get there, but it's a little bit more balanced, and it's a little easier for us on a cash flow to take care of. So in September, remember our fiscal year does begin in July. We still have 12-month employees. We're paying teachers on extended 24 periods. You still have health care. We're still running lights, electricity, and we are receiving 15% of our revenue comes in at September. We have a little bit of a dearth between October and November, and up to about 3 to 4 years ago, we did take a mid-year loan to make sure that we could bridge our payroll payments to our staff. We've been able to, based on increasing our fund balance that increased our Moody's rating, it also has done away with our need to draw upon that line of credit. That means that we're not expending additional taxpayer money because we have enough money for cash flow. In addition, those trains come in with those train cars and the amount of money. The second big drop is around December. So within the middle of the year, we have about 40% of our funding. Then the taxes start to come in between the January and April time period, and then the payment in March. So that's a little bit of just as we are expending everything throughout, it's a more consistent cost with September increasing because we have another 50% of our staff come on board for operating the classrooms, busing. And so if you kind of think of a home budget across time, you would see that it tends to be, we get paid every 2 weeks or on the 15th and 30th, you have kind of a budget and you have expenses. On the bottom side, kind of just looks at that the revenues are kind of fluctuating across time, those train cars, but our expenditures kind of come in and they kick off and elevate around September. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Debbie Burnett, and she's going to walk us through the budget hearing and our finances. We did have a handout for people with regards to the multi-year adoption and then also the publication that was put in the paper. So without further ado, Debbie.
Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I'm Debbie Brunette, and I'm just thrilled to be with you tonight. I'll introduce myself in a minute, but I know we've been sitting for quite some time. So if you would like to take 30 seconds to stand up and stretch your legs, please feel welcome to do so. And I'll get started in just a second. I know this is a lot of information, so please feel welcome.
Get the wiggles out. We're gonna get the wiggles out.
I'm a teacher, so I totally am like former second grade. Okay, I'm not a teacher anymore, but I did second grade. You did? Yeah, me too. That's awesome.
Okay, I am sure that wasn't long enough for everyone, but I will get started. Thank you again for coming tonight. I work with Baird. I'm actually on a team with Lisa, but I do something slightly different. And I've been here since mid-May, filling in as your interim business official. So I've quickly learned as much as I could about your finances and helped prepare for the meeting tonight. I do this I have done this for years. I've been a business official for 15 years. Prior to, I was a teacher. And so I feel like today, I tell everyone, I'm still teaching every day. Instead of teaching second graders about math, I'm teaching adults about school finance. So I hope there are a couple of things that you pick up on tonight about school finance that you can take with you. So the goal of tonight's meeting is to give you an overview of an estimated operational budget for this year. That's the purpose of our annual meeting and budget hearing. And so like Lisa talked, she was using a lot of last year's numbers and was talking then about the debt portion specifically. This is talking more about your operational budget and what we're estimating for this upcoming, or this current school year, right? School has started now. And the reason why, oh, it's not forwarding. Oh, there we go. Thank you. The reason why we're saying that it's still estimates is some people don't know that although we are almost a quarter of the way through our fiscal year, which starts July 1, we still haven't received all of our final numbers for the budget. We actually don't receive our final number until October 15th. So until then, we're making our best estimates, which are reflected in the budget you have today. I'll share with you the key deadlines that are coming up, which provide those final numbers, most of them coming from the state. And then the board will do a final approval of the levy and the budget at the October board meeting, and then deemed final. So the information we have for you is an estimate. It's the best estimate we could do at this point in time. And I'll tell you some of the variables that may change. And actually, I should rephrase that, they will change. I always say there's no way I can tell you today exactly what the number will be a month from now, but we do our best to estimate so you have good information here. As Lisa mentioned, many who come to the annual meeting are very interested in the tax impact for the upcoming year. So I always like to start at that point. And as Lisa gave you a sneak peek to, we are estimating that the mill rate, so that the tax per thousand, is projected to decrease by approximately 50 cents per thousand this year. And so if we come back and use that $100,000 home that Lisa used as an example, that would be about $50 for that taxpayer. And again, just estimates. We are presenting you a balanced budget tonight. So our revenues are equaling our expenditures, and I'll share with you a little information on how we came up with that. And then just know that we're still finalizing variables. In the last few years, the numbers, our budget numbers, have been more volatile than normal just due to the uncertainties of COVID and the last couple of years. So when I present, I always like to share, well, I almost always like to share this visual. So I'm standing up here tonight and I'm going to talk with you a lot about tax levy and a lot about budget, because that's what I'm here to do tonight. But know that as we're putting the numbers together and as we are working behind the scenes, it's always the educational opportunities for our kids that are coming first and foremost. So I don't get to talk about that much. I'm not an expert here in what you do, the great things you do for kids. But know that cog is there. My job is just to talk about a couple of different things tonight. So sticking with that mill rate concept, this visual goes back a little further than the one Lisa shared, but it's the historical mill rate in the district. And you can see that our projections are slightly lower than last year. And they're getting back to about the level that we saw back in 9-10 or 10-11. So most enjoy hearing that the mill rate is projected to go down. Excuse me, my clicker. What that is made up of, Lisa had the bubbles for the tax levy. I've broken it out into numbers for you. The agenda item that comes after this presentation is an approval of the levy, knowing it's still an estimate. And based on our current estimates, the levy is broken out in this way: that revenue limit, the operational side, mostly dictated by the state, and it's used for operating the school. And when we say operating, it's the salaries to and the benefits to employ those who teach our kids and support our kids. It's the utilities, it's the building insurance, it's what we need in order to provide the great things for kids. Then there's the referendum debt and community service that gets added on to the total projected levy. So this is the estimated levy right now. And then again, it will become finalized at the end of October when all the state numbers have been received. So in summary, for the tax levy cog of our little gear, we are anticipating or expecting the mill rate to be down about 50 cents per thousand over last year. Now let's go on to the budget side. Did you see that animation? I had extra animation here. I decided to pull it out. I thought it just might be a little too crazy for a night like tonight. But Lisa talked a little bit about that revenue limit. We talked about the levy and what we can control and what we can't control. So the revenue limit side, we've said that term several times, it's a state formula. And essentially in 1993, this formula came out, and the state said no longer can you tax whatever you want in order to operate the school. We are going to give you a formula, and if you want your budget to balance, you need to then adjust your expenditures to fit underneath it. And the reason why we talk about this formula so much is that here in Prescott, for this year's budget, we expect it to make up about 90% of that with the per pupil categorical aid, which is also a state budget thing, to make up about 90% of what you have to spend to educate your kids. So it's an extremely important calculation in our budgeting. It's also one that we don't have all the numbers for, that we're estimating. But that's why we talk about that formula so much, because it's so impactful, and it's driven primarily by the state and their variables. The other 10%, we have open enrollment. That's where your state and federal grants would fall. It's also gate receipts even when you come to athletic events. So all of those things make up that pie of the question when we say how much do we have to spend for the year. Now most districts, and Prescott fits into this as well, they work to have a balanced budget, especially this time of year. And the budget, if you like the detail of the budget, you're welcome to read through it. I know most people just kind of set it aside, which is okay, it doesn't hurt my feelings. But most districts aim to have a balanced budget this time of year. Ideally, maybe like your home budget, you aim at the end of the year to have a slight surplus, especially rather than having a deficit. So what happens here as well is when we learn what that revenue budget is, then we make sure our expenditures tuck underneath. And here, you've started the year, and we've proposed a balanced budget this year, but in the past, you started the year with a balanced budget. And throughout the year, you have been able to come in below budget, as this graph represents. And so those dollars have been able to be added to fund balance to help eliminate your need to cash flow borrow. It helped with your bond rating. And dollars have also been put into we call it Fund 46, but it's a fund to save for capital needs. And so I know the question came, why don't we pay for these items out of our regular budget? The district is saving for those. Just within our revenue constraints, we just can't save that kind of dollar amount in the amount of time we need. Am I explaining that okay? Okay. So how do we spend the money? This is detailed if you want to look at all of the numbers, but essentially you're spending a majority of it on instruction and supporting the instruction of the kids. And that's exactly where we want to be spending it. So instruction would be the teachers and the aides and the supplies that we need in classrooms. So all the things that are directly with kids, and the support, those are guidance counselors and the curriculum and the transportation to get the kids to and from, the utilities, so all the things to provide the environment to educate them. So are we spending dollars toward teaching and supporting kids? Yes. That's exactly where the dollars are being spent. So some highlights for you, again, if you want to look through the numbers, you can, but the Cliff Note version is, I do believe you're doing great things for kids. I think if you talk with the administrators, they can give you dozens of examples, and the teachers and the aides and the custodians and your bus drivers and food service workers are all just doing an amazing job, your secretaries and office staff. And so all of that work is being done, not represented in the numbers you're seeing. It is a balanced budget that we have for you today. We do expect when the final numbers come in for the budget to continue to be balanced as proposed in October. We're still managing the needs and unknowns. Things change each day. And so we are updating those numbers, and we will continue to update until the board does approve it in October. We always want to work with the best numbers that we have. We do our third Friday count this Friday. So that's a big number in our formula. third Friday count. It is one of the drivers in that state revenue limit formula we mentioned, so that's still an unknown. We're estimating that, as is open enrollment. So we'll finalize those numbers. And the reason why I bring up number 5 with the skewing of budget to actual trends, many find that if they like to look at the budget document, they like to look and they like to see like steady, maybe steady growth between the years. We found that these last few years with COVID, they've caused atypical, I think would be the right word, ups and downs in those numbers. And so 1920, the end of the year was different. Last year, of course, was different. This year is somewhat normalizing. So if you do read through the data and you see some unusual shifts, there is an explanation for it. I may not have it for you right now tonight, but I can get it for you, and please do ask if you have concern. The budget does include that additional referendum debt levy to continue to prepay debt. And like Lisa says, anytime we prepay debt, just like you might refinance a home or prepay debt if you have it, it generates interest savings. And in the case of our referendum approved debt, those are interest costs that you later don't have to pay because it has to stay in that debt bucket. And then one thing I always talk about just in summary is just that continual focus on short-term decisions that help us long-term. So talking about facility needs that position you better in the future, talking about our operational budget so that it positions us well this year and into the future. So the forecasting that we do lends to that and leads forward. So with that, if you're curious about these final deadlines when we will know the numbers, the student count is this Friday. It's the biggest local thing we have left. The report is due October 1st. The state will also give us our final property value number on October 1st, which will help us finalize that mill rate number. And then on the 15th, our final number is our aid from the state. And what's really important about that is that number doesn't give us more or less to spend. It just tells us how much of our revenue limit they're going to cover and how much is left over for the taxpayer to pay. So we always work to get as much aid as we can from the state, so then it's less for the taxpayer, and we find out what that final number is on the 15th, which is why we can't certify until after. So with that, I just want to remind you again, I talked about the budget part. This really is about the educational opportunities, and just know that I keep that in mind. That's important. Are there any questions that you have regarding anything that I spoke about or any of the materials?
Joe, would you mind standing up and just stating your name again? We got a microphone right behind you.
Thank you. Yeah, Harold made a good point. Can everybody hear me? I'm Joe Roll. I like chart. What percentage of that is state aid? Years ago, it used to be around 40 or 45%, I believe. I'm just curious currently what that is.
Did everyone hear the question okay? Good question, thank you. And I apologize for turning my back. I was trying to get the slide back to you. So the question if you want to look at the numbers, you actually are projected to increase in aid when you prepay the debt. This may sound weird in the formula, it just is. I've learned in school finance that sometimes things just are what they are, right? But when you prepay debt, it actually generates more aid for you and helps your tax levy. And so it's actually a cool cycle you can get into where you can prepay debt, you get more for aid, which allows you to prepay more debt, and then it's a snowball effect for you. So the numbers, I don't have the specific percentage for you off the top of my head, and honestly I should. But if you want to look at the numbers so you can calculate, it's so about 14 million, and about 9 million is projected to be equalization aid in your budget. So.
Okay, I just want to make sure. It's still short of 50% of our revenue, state aid.
The general aid that you're referring to, yes. The state shifted to per pupil categorical aid a few biennial budgets ago, which doesn't impact your taxes at all. So you'd want to make sure to add that in, but I hear what you're saying.
Sure. You know, directly kind of what I'm getting at is I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands that part of that 88% represent the money the state gives us to operate.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece of that then is, I know from years ago, we seen a change in evaluations in the district, and at the same time, we also seen changes in our state aid makeup of our revenue stream. So I know that there's an interplay there. The higher that our property here in western Wisconsin is valued against Milwaukee, typically the less state aid we get with past formulations. But that was my main question. When I looked at the slide, it implied like maybe that was all local money, and I wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. So,
Great clarification.
can I ask one more question?
Keep going, Joe.
So that line item number 46, so the other presentation we seen showed line item 46 as being a category in our operating budget where we can save for boilers and shingles and those sort of things, correct?
Joe, are you talking Fund 46?
Yes, sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
So I just want to understand one thing, because I think it's a concern that some voters are going to have, and that is it possible for the district, and I think that interest rates are very low, it's very attractive to borrow money for needs. However, you know, if we didn't want to do that, are there opportunities to look at a levy cap referendum that would better fund that in our 5 and 10-year budgets?
So if I am understanding the question correctly, is could we go to operational referendum instead of debt referendum in order to finance the projects?
I'm just thinking of past levy cap overrides.
Yep.
And I know that I think at times our intentions were to better fund that. And it looks like, you know, we did the best we could. So I'm not picking on anybody here. I think things look really good. It's good to hear our fund balance is up. I remember hearing a lot about short-term borrowing. There's a lot of good news there. But what I'm saying is this. You know, if we have an item that has a 5 or 10-year life, we probably don't want to have a 20-year note against it. We wouldn't want to do that at home. And so I don't know what the makeup of the referendum question will be, and I'm going to be patient and find out what it is. But if there's some items that really have less than a 20-year life, one option for paying for those would be a levy cap override that would better fund, what do we call it?
Fund 46.
Fund 46. I'm just asking if that's something we can legally do or not. It's just a question.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. So Fund 46 is our fund, just to give a little background, and then I will answer, if that's okay. Fund 46 is a fund that was new, probably 8 years ago-ish, and it allowed school districts for the first time to have a separate fund in order to save for facility needs. Prior to that, there was a fund, but it wasn't advantageous for districts who were aided in the state like you are. And so the district did open this account. There's about $1 million in it as of now, so they have been working to save up funds for this. The way you save up funds is to use operational funds. So they've transferred their maintenance budget that was unneeded at year end and was put in there. And when we say unneeded, you're budgeting for your boiler or replacement. Mike would be able to speak better to this than I would. But and so at year end, you're able to allocate dollars to that and save up for those future needs. And so when we talk about an operational referendum, districts can go to operational referendum in order to tax more to put in this account. I don't think it's quite as common because many say they prefer you. Actually, they're divided. Some would prefer you to tax them now and save up and have the dollars when it's available. Others would prefer you to come and ask to be taxed for it once it's needed. So you certainly can do that. You certainly can go to operational referendum and finance the smaller project shorter. I think that's something, if Lisa was still here, she's the team that does an excellent job analyzing the best financing structure for what you have. Most of what Mike described does have like a 20-year useful life, roofs, boilers, HVAC, and such. But valid point, and I think the important thing in listening to you, the important thing it seems is that the district is considering all options and making sure they're exploring any avenue possible. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, I wanted to find out if it's possible or not, and I'm sure it's something we've been looking at. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. No.
Hi, everybody. This is Veronica Wittick, and I live in town here in Prescott. I just had a couple questions on this lovely budget. So, kind of in regards to Fund 46, is it possible to fully draw on that on any given year? Is there certain restrictions and requirements that can be used, that money can be used for? And then secondly, I just had some questions around the Community Service Fund, what that's for and what that can also be used for.
Thank you. Did everyone hear the question okay? Okay, so the first question was about Fund 46, that the saving for the facility. You have to have a 10-year plan, facility plan to start it, and the dollars need to be spent on something on that plan. And so that plan is on file. When the fund was first started, this is another, I would describe, goofy thing. The state said that when you start it, you can't spend the money for the first 5 years. You can put $1 in it, and you can start that 5-year clock, but for the first 5 years, you can't spend it. Once the 5 years is up, you can put money in and out freely, meaning you can add money to it and spend it that same year or the next year, but for some reason, you just couldn't the first 5 years. So I believe the district is able to spend it starting next year. August of 2022 would be the first date that these dollars would be available to be spent, and then they would have to be spent on something on the current 10-year plan that the board has approved.
And that plan I can find, is that published?
The question is where can that be found? And I don't know if it's published, right? Rick's making a note.
We could, it's part of the facility.
Rick, can you?
Yes. Yep. So with regards to, at the time in 2017, the 10-year plan, every April, Mike Koika presents to the board is an updated 10-year plan. The Facility Advisory Committee has received that, and we can make sure that that's made available to anybody as well with regards to questions that they would have on that. And it's updated on an annual basis, obviously, right? You're kind of rotating that 10-year in the future. With regards to the community fund, that $150,000 that's taxed, that goes to run 2 programs within the school system. So that is the dollars that fund community education. And so those are all the funds for the programming, the salaries, with regards to running community education. And then the other part is for PCR. So what is unique to the Prescott Public School System is that many districts have, or many communities have their own parks and rec services. That did not occur within our townships. And so Prescott Public Schools owns all of the 80 acres of ball fields. They maintain those. They make sure that they're irrigated, cut, and put up with the structures. So if you look at First National Bank Park, the fencing, and things like that, we've had very good business partnerships with First National Bank. The Prescott Foundation has donated money, but those dollars for 80 go to run Prescott Community Recreation and Community Education. And it's just a money in, and then it goes to both of those programs.
got a microphone back there, Katie, that works. Does that microphone work? Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions? Right over here.
Jim Woslowick, Oak Grove. I have one more question on the Fund 46. You were kind of explaining that there's some advantages to paying down our debt, but can that money also be used to fund our Fund 46? Or only operational dollars?
Good question. Well, let me make sure I understand your question. Is your question, can we use Fund 46 dollars to pay debt? Can we use debt to fund 46?
The money that we are using to pay down, to prepay debt,
Okay.
can that be used to fund our Fund 46?
We cannot use, because those dollars, no.
Okay.
The dollars that are levied to prepay your referendum debt, by statutes have to be used for referendum debt. And so they could not be used to put into Fund 46. You can use operational dollars to put into Fund 46, but not tax levy for debt. Yeah.
Kate back there.
I don't need a microphone. Kate Otto, just wondering, I wasn't very clear where that 10-year plan was, Rick, where we could find that.
So the clarification is where to find the 10-year plan.
So it would be.
Do you want?
So every April, Mike Hoyka's presentation to the board, that would be on the board agendas. We will make sure that we put it under facility and grounds so that it's easier for people to see.
So it's not there currently?
It's on the board agendas in April of every year, but not under facilities.
Okay.
Ken back there.
Ken Anderson, Clifton Township. I'm wondering if on our current 10-year plan, are the things that we're talking about that need to be done, that we're talking about going to referendum for, are all of these items currently on the 10-year plan?
If you didn't hear the response, the response was correct. Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody else? All right.
Well, thank you so much for having me tonight, and please let us know if after you have any questions. I believe I'm passing this over. Okay. And
Yeah,
thank you
I gotta
again
get
for
my
coming
notes.
tonight.
Yeah, so, okay, we're going to move on to the resolutions now. The first one on the list here is for Resolution A is the adoption of the tax levy. And again, any voting member in the audience can make the motion.
I make a motion to approve the tax levy.
Do we?
Chris Watsina, Prescott. I make a motion to approve the tax levy as it is.
I'll second the motion, Joe Roll Clifton.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Can you just repeat the motion for people that couldn't hear? I mean, Mike, I feel like
I
some people
cannot,
need a
if I get it
microphone.
right. The motion was to approve the tax levy as presented,
Thank you.
and it was seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one, which is Resolution B, salaries of board members. And Dr. Spicuzza, I don't know if you have anything to share there.
I'm just getting back to We'll catch up. So Resolution B is the salaries of board members. Currently, board members are reimbursed as a stipend of $2,000. The last time it was adjusted, it was in 2019. They are equally distributed from the old language board chairman, vice chairman, clerk, treasurer, and at-large member.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? Katie, can we get a microphone over here? Thank you.
Jim Waslewick, Oak Grove. I'm curious what other school districts are paying their board members in our area.
Michael Kosmalski, Oak Grove Township. I think it was 3 or 4 meetings ago, I did do that research on what other boards around us are paying, because I believe before the last time it was increased, the time before, Mark Helmer might have a better memory than I do, I think it was 1990 was the last time that the, he said that was correct, so right around there. But we are one of the absolute lowest paid. I know a lot of them, they do differentiate between the board chair getting $3,500 to $4,500 down to like $2,500 or $2,700 for most of them. So I know at that time, a couple of years ago, I made a motion to increase so we were higher, like on the low end, but still higher, and it didn't pass. But I do know from the research 3 or 4 years ago, I looked at all the boards around us. Obviously, Hudson River Falls are different districts than us, but Middle Board Conference, we are at the very bottom.
Anybody else have any questions or comments here? If not, we can entertain a motion.
My name's Franz Peter, Prescott resident, former school board member. Might also be interested to know, because you put a lot of time in this year, what your average pay was dollars per hour.
Dollars per hour? What do you think, Steve?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to know.
I don't think I could answer that. I'd have to get a lot of zeros before the decimal.
I'll tell you, for most of us on the board, we really don't care. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but when I ran for school board, I didn't know it was a paid position until I went to Oh, I'm sorry.
Steve Sizemore.
I can do that. Steve Sizemore, Oak Grove Township. I was just saying that a lot of us really aren't concerned about the dollars. That's not why we do this. But when I ran the first time in 2014, I didn't know it was a paid position until I went to my first closed session in April of that year, and everybody got checks. And I said, well, what are these checks for? And so then I learned that it was somewhat paid. So, don't stress about what we're paid. I don't think any of us are going to be too upset about wherever it ends up.
Anybody else? Would anybody care to make a motion? We got one right behind you.
Charles Wolf, Prescott, I would make a motion to provide each school board member.
Can you hold on to that, Charles? Can we get a microphone on him, please? Thanks, Katie. I sorry for running you around like this. Just so everybody can hear you. And state your name and...
Charles Wolf, Prescott. And I would make a motion that we continue to pay our school board members $2,000 a year and give them our gratitude and celebrate the fact that they're not in it for the money.
I second the motion.
Did we get that? So the motion was to continue paying the existing salary of $2,000 per year per board member. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you. Resolution C, reimbursement of board members' expenses.
Yes, so currently, the school board also partakes in ongoing professional development and learning. We have a representative that is also on the CISA board, so they do travel, they do go to Madison. At this time, it's only at the discretion of the electorate as to whether or not board members would be allowed to be reimbursed when they're doing district business and they incur expenses.
Any questions on this? If you have one, just raise your hand or stand up and Katie will run the microphone over to you. Ken, over there, Katie. Oh, we got Andrea. Thank you. Thank you.
Ken Anderson, Clifton Township. Are you paying mileage when you travel? I mean, what are the reimbursements? Are you paying the standard rate of 50 cents a mile to Madison? What are the reimbursement values?
Correct. There are two different ways. If they use their own vehicle, it's the federal IRS tax for or reimbursement for mileage. We do have a district vehicle that they're allowed to check out, in which obviously there's no reimbursement for that. Usually the participation fee or registration fee, and then their overnight and food for that mid-year conference.
Any other questions? Okay. Anybody care to make a motion? The motion was to pass Resolution C to reimburse board members' expenses. Second. Who was the second from? Second. Okay, we got that? Yep. We know the name? Yep, Charles Wolf. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is Resolution D to set the annual meeting date for the 2022-23 calendar year.
Correct. So it is at the discretion of the voting community on when we set this meeting. By statute, it has to be done before the third Wednesday of October 1st. About 3 years ago, we did petition to defer to the board to announce at a board meeting in the spring when it's going to set the agenda or set the date for the annual meeting. Part of that is procedural. We, at the end of the fiscal year, is June 30th. In July, we undergo our external audit. By statute, we must be audited on an annual basis. And that gives us the ability to kind of understand where our standing is with regards to our fund balance, and we start to identify when what our projections will be for the future school year. So it has been helpful as a district with small office staff to be able to crunch and turn around one school year and prepare for the next, to defer to the board per statute 120.08, to let them announce at a later date to identify the board, the annual meeting that can't be held before May 15th, but has to be done before October 31st.
Just a correction, the third Wednesday in October, correct?
Third Wednesday, sorry, correct.
Anybody in the audience have a question or comment? So,
and there'd be just friendly, just typos on the second line of the motion is just, we would be setting it for the 2022 annual meeting.
All right. This time we'll entertain a motion.
I move to allow the school board to set the date before the third Wednesday in October.
The motion was to allow the school board to set the annual meeting date before the third Wednesday in October. Did we get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that what it says here? Yeah, okay. October 2021. Be 2022. 2022.
Yes.
Right? Do we want to re-say that? Do we need that clarification?
I think you corrected it.
So this is for October 2022.
I'll second.
Michael had the second there, Katie. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this one? Joe, Katie, can you get him?
I would just offer it'd be nice if we could start it at 7 p.m. versus 6. I think it would accommodate some of the work and commute schedules of the community a little better. But we do not need to amend the motion. I'm just offering that thought. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thanks, Joe. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you. And lastly, we have, we need a motion to adjourn. Anybody want to stick around for a little while longer? We have a motion to adjourn from Marie Magnan. That's a motion. Oh, I think Mrs. Lehman got you. That's a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you.